My name is Nora Ellison Carter, and I was erased from my family by a single email. It arrived the night before National Nurses Day. Sent by my mother to my siblings and copied to every relative except me. The subject line read, "So proud of my children." And inside she wrote, "My daughter Jillian leads her firm's legal division. Oliver just finished his new design for the city's skyline. And Nora. Well, she's still a nurse." I didn't reply. Didn't call. Didn't beg to be included. I just moved the message into a folder I named Proof and let the silence do the talking. That night, the glow of the screen lingered on my face longer than it should have. The kind of light that makes you realize you've become an outsider in your own bloodline. My hands didn't tremble. They just hovered above the keyboard as if waiting for a response that would never come. There was no anger. Only a cold understanding that this was not a mistake, but a verdict. I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark. Knowing that a single line from my mother had rewritten my place in the world, the erasure was complete. And I was done asking to belong. My mother, Elaine Carter, spent her life shaping other people's images and never stopped trying to polish her own. She built her career in public relations and carried that same performance into our family. Rehearsing pride like a press statement, my sister Jillian followed her path. A corporate attorney with a husband who measured worth in quarterly reports. And my brother Oliver designed homes that made the Savannah skyline look like his personal trophy case. I was the one who broke pattern. The daughter who chose the hospital ward over the boardroom. The last dinner we shared proved how far I'd fallen from her definition of success. Elaine arranged the seating like a campaign event. My place set near the waiter's station while Jillian and Oliver flanked her like dignitaries. When she handed me the menu, she smiled. "At least you know how to take care of people." "Right." "Nora?" she said. Voice dipped in sugar. I told her calmly. "I do. Especially the ones who forget how to be human." The silence afterward had the precision of applause withheld. Jillian filled it with talk of her new client. A developer worth $5,000 an hour. And my mother laughed as if money could erase insult. Oliver raised his glass but didn't meet my eyes. By dessert, I realized that the table wasn't just uneven, it was built to remind me I didn't belong there anymore. When I opened the Carter Family Updates thread the next morning, my name was no longer there. The feed still glimmered with weekend trips and brunch photos. But between Jillian's champagne captions and Oliver's skyline updates, the gap where my messages used to be said everything. The last post came from my mother. Polite and surgical. "Let's keep this group for family matters that reflect well on us." There was no mention of me. No signature. Just the precision of exclusion disguised as etiquette. At the hospital, Brenda caught me staring at my phone and asked what was wrong. I told her. "I think I just got edited out of my own bloodline." She frowned. Her hands still in her scrub's pocket. "Then stop asking them to notice you." "Nora, they already decided who counts." Her words weren't cruel, only honest. And they left no space for denial. That night, I deleted the thread, blocked their numbers, and closed my social media. I didn't draft a message or announce a break. I simply vanished. Exactly the way they'd taught me to. The silence felt heavier than grief, but cleaner than pretending. I poured water into a glass and watched the ice sink, thinking how quickly something solid could disappear when ignored long enough. I met Lucas Grayson during a night shift that refused to end. He was the forensic medical specialist assigned to a case that came through the ER. Calm and precise where the rest of us were running on caffeine and instinct. When I handed him a chart, he said, "You nurses hold this place together. Doctors just pretend they do." I smiled for the first time in weeks and told him, "You can say that because you're not afraid your mother might hear it." The laugh that followed felt like oxygen. We started crossing paths, often late-night consults. Shared coffee. quiet conversations in hallways that smelled of antiseptic and exhaustion. Lucas talked about how medicine forgot its soul. I talked about how I wasn't done finding mine. Brenda was the one who pushed me toward grad school. Sliding a brochure across the nurses' station one morning. "You could run this department," she said. I told her. "I can barely run my own sleep schedule." She just grinned. "Start there." I would. 2 years later, I did more than run it. I rebuilt it. The nurse leadership program I launched doubled retention and cut turnover in half. Lucas joined the project. The same steadiness in his tone when he said, "You've done what most people only talk about." I shrugged, though my chest burned with something close to pride. "No," I said. "I just stopped waiting for permission." When the hospital board promoted me to head nurse, there were no speeches. No congratulations from home, just the quiet satisfaction of surviving without witnesses. I wore that silence like armor. Proof that I hadn't disappeared. I had evolved. The article came out on a Thursday morning. A small column buried in the Savannah Chronicle titled "Head Nurse Leads Innovation Program." I didn't post it. Didn't mention it at work. And assumed it would vanish by the weekend. By the following Monday, Lucas walked into my office holding a printed email. "You might want to see this," he said, sliding the page across my desk. It was from the Georgia Healthcare Hero Awards Committee, confirming that my mother, Elaine Carter, had reached out to introduce herself as the proud parent of this year's nominee. To there, I read it twice before speaking. "She contacted them?" I asked. My voice flatter than I meant it to be. Lucas nodded. "She asked to attend the ceremony and offer remarks about your upbringing and work ethic." I leaned back. The words, lodging somewhere between disbelief and inevitability. "Of course she did." He folded his arms. "You want me to reply?" I shook my head. "No. Let her come if she wants. Just make sure she's listed as guest. Not family." Text. He looked at me for a long moment before saying, "That's going to sting." I smiled without humor. "Good. She taught me how." Brenda called that night after Lucas told her everything. "So, what's the move?" she asked. Half curious, half protective. I told her I wasn't stopping my mother from coming. If I block her, she'll tell the world I'm ashamed of her. If I let her, she'll expose herself. Brenda sighed. "Then you better control the narrative." I smiled into the phone. "No. I'll control the silence." The next morning, Lucas met me in the break room, coffee in hand. "You sure about this?" he asked. "She'll expect a reaction." I shook my head. "That's the point. She wants a fight. I'll give her stillness." He studied me for a moment before saying, "Then at least let me handle logistics. I'll make sure she's seated, not staged." I nodded, grateful that he understood strategy didn't always need volume. Later that week, I drafted my acceptance speech in the quiet of my office. It had no names, no family references, only gratitude for colleagues and patients who taught me why the work mattered. When Lucas read it, he said, "You're not pulling punches." I answered, "No, I'm just not wasting them." Brenda laughed when she heard the line and told me, "That's your armor right there." I smiled, setting the speech aside. The plan wasn't revenge, it was restraint. The kind that makes noise only when truth hits a microphone. The night of the ceremony arrived with the kind of polish my mother used to worship. The Georgia Civic Center glittered under white lights, and every table held a folded program with my name printed beside the word honoree. Lucas stood beside me near the registration desk, scanning the crowd with quiet certainty. "She's here," he said, his voice even. I didn't ask how he knew. Brenda joined us moments later, whispering, Second row. Left side. She brought them your siblings. I only nodded and said, let them sit close enough to hear. 2. The orchestra played something soft and forgettable as guests filled the hall. My mother's perfume reached me before her voice did. A familiar sweetness sharpened by nerves. She leaned toward an event coordinator and said, I'll just say a few words after my daughter's speech. The woman smiled politely, not realizing the statement wasn't permission but presumption. Lucas leaned closer to me. Still want silence? He asked. Now more than ever, I said, keeping my eyes on the stage. When the host began reading names of previous winners, Brenda squeezed my hand and murmured, You ready? I smiled without turning. I've been ready for 4 years. The applause rose like a wave. And in that sound, I could already hear the moment the room would finally fall quiet again for all the right reasons. When they called my name, the applause felt distant, like it belonged to another life. I walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and began exactly the way I had rehearsed. I became a nurse because care isn't an instinct, it's a discipline, I said. The crowd listened, the kind of silence that waits for meaning. To my colleagues who stand through double shifts, to the patients who teach us patience, and to the hands that don't wear white coats but still save lives, you are the reason I'm standing here. I paused just long enough to breathe. This award belongs to all of you. I saw Lucas near the aisle, steady, as always, and Brenda wiping her eyes with a napkin. The applause rose again, polite and sincere, until it was broken by a single voice from the second row. Nora, you forgot to thank your mother. The room froze. I turned toward the sound. My mother standing halfway up, her pearls trembling against the stage lights. I said evenly, I'm sorry. Ma'am. Who are you? She blinked, startled. Your mother. Elaine Carter. She answered, her tone already defensive. I let the microphone catch every word. 4 years ago, you sent an email saying you had no daughter who worked as a nurse. Tonight, I'm honoring your request. The murmur that followed wasn't cruel, it was understanding. Elaine tried to recover, forcing a laugh. Oh, Nora. Don't be dramatic. Families say things they don't mean. I nodded slowly. You're right. But some words don't come back once they're written. The moderator shifted in his seat. Unsure whether to intervene, I continued, my voice clear. I was raised to believe that love is earned by achievement. But the people who stood beside me through every 12-hour shift taught me something better, that worth doesn't need permission. 2. My mother lowered herself back into her chair, the applause starting before she fully sat down. I turned back to the crowd. So tonight, I want to thank the family that chose to stay, the ones who never asked what my title was before they offered help. The audience stood, the sound rolling through the hall like release. Lucas met my eyes, nodding once, as if to say it was over. I closed my speech with one final line. I'm not here because I became better than anyone else. I'm here because I stopped trying to convince the wrong people I was enough. The applause carried long after I stepped away from the microphone, the echo sharper and cleaner than forgiveness. In the hallway after the ceremony, Elaine was waiting, her posture still rehearsed even under fluorescent light. You humiliated me, she said, her voice trembling more from anger than shame. I answered quietly, No. You humiliated yourself 4 years ago. Tonight. Everyone else just caught up. Jillian stepped between us, her tone sharp. Nora, you didn't have to do that in public. You could have handled it privately. I looked at her and said, I stopped handling family problems in private when they stopped treating me like family. I did. Oliver tried to smooth the air, his voice low. Can't we start over? It's been long enough. I shook my head. Starting over would mean pretending none of this happened. I'm not interested in fiction anymore. Elaine's face hardened. You'll regret making enemies out of your own blood. I smiled faintly. I didn't make enemies. I just stopped playing the role of the obedient one. Lucas appeared behind me. Calm as always. Ready to go? He asked. I nodded. More than ready. Elaine called after me. You think this makes you better than us? I turned once before leaving. No, I said. It makes me free. Brenda met us at the door, still grinning through the chaos. You handled that like a pro. I exhaled for the first time all night. No, I said. I handled it like someone who finally learned the difference between being quiet and being silenced. It's tech. By the next morning, the story had already traveled farther than I expected. A local columnist wrote a short piece titled, "When Dignity Speaks Louder Than Blood," and it spread through every hospital inbox in Savannah. No gossip. No scandal. Just the quiet retelling of what everyone had witnessed. Jillian locked her LinkedIn account after comments began piling up about family values. And Oliver stepped away from a new client project. Citing stress, Elaine withdrew from her women's club a week later when someone asked her during brunch, "Is it true your daughter's the award winner you once disowned?" I didn't answer calls or messages. Not out of anger, but completion. Brenda left a sticky note on my locker that read, "You just taught an entire city what grace looks like." Lucas handed me the morning paper and said, "You know this isn't the end, right?" I smiled at him. "No," I said. "It's the correction." Life settled into rhythm again. Rounds. Reports. The same soft hum of monitors that had always been my backdrop. Only now, every sound in that ward reminded me I hadn't lost a family. I'd simply outgrown one that refused to see me. 6 months later, a plain white envelope arrived at my apartment with no return address. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, steady and deliberate. The same script that once signed every birthday card and report card note. Inside was a single page. "Nora," it read. "I was wrong. I see that now. I won't ask you to forgive me. Only to know that I understand what I did. You were always the strong one." There was no closing line. No love. Mom. Just that unfinished sentence hanging like a truce no one declared. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into my desk drawer between medical journals and staff memos. Lucas noticed it the next evening and asked, "You going to answer her?" I shook my head. "No need," I said. She finally said everything I waited years to hear. The air around that letter felt neutral. Not heavy. Not light, just still. I didn't frame it. Didn't destroy it. Didn't let it own more space than one piece of paper could. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone's daughter trying to be seen. I felt like myself. And that was more forgiveness than I ever planned to give. I went back to the hospital the following week. Same corridors. Same rhythm. Only this time the quiet felt earned. Brenda found me in the break room. A mug of coffee in each hand. "You don't miss it, do you?" she asked, half smiling. I shook my head. "No. I used to think family was something you needed to keep. Now I know it's something you build." She handed me a cup and said, "Then keep building." We stood there a moment longer, not saying much. The silence between us more comfortable than any apology. That night, I stayed late to help a new nurse finish her rounds. She looked up from a chart and asked, "Do you ever get tired?" I smiled and said, "Only when I forget why I started." When I finally walked out of the building, the city lights of Savannah blurred against the river. And for the first time in years, I felt like the story I was living belonged entirely to me. I didn't need a witness or an audience, just peace. And the strength to keep it. If you've ever been judged for who you are or what you do, tell me in the comments with the words "still standing." I read every one.